Joining me on The Current today here at the Transforming Australia Conference is the Chief Climate Commissioner, Professor Tim Flannery. Professor Flannery, thank you very much for joining us here today. Just to start with, we're hearing a lot of debate in the news lately and in the media about the climate change topic and the carbon tax in particular. Is a carbon tax the right way to go for Australia?
Well, look, the Commission doesn't really comment on government policy, and the reason we don't do that is that we've made the decision to give away some power, so the ability to comment on policy, to gain some authority, because the waters of this have been so muddied by politics and opinion that we think that Australia really needs an unbiased source of information. So can't comment on policy, but happy to talk about other things.
Now, this morning you released a new report from the Climate Commission focusing on the Illawarra region. Focusing on that was about rising sea levels, the increased temperatures leading to potential increased bushfires. What do you think the future holds for the Illawarra region in general, and how can they adapt to these issues and make themselves a more sustainable region, basically?
Sure. Well, look, the future of the Illawarra region is going to be very heavily impacted by what humans do now, globally, as well as what happens locally in this area. I can imagine a future where the world acts to deal with climate change, so the threat of sea level rise is minimised, where the threat of temperature increases and bushfires is minimised, where this area takes a leading role in clean technology development and becomes a regional hub for the development of those clean technologies and goes on to a very prosperous and stable future. I can also imagine a world where effective action isn't taken, where by the end of the century sea level is threatening infrastructure around the Illawarra, where the bushfire threat is greater than ever, where other climate disruptions are being felt, and where the community hasn't invested in the future and therefore is not prospering. That is nothing like as desirable.
You've spoken in the past and say that you are quite optimistic about the future and in our attempts to tackle climate change. And you also say that this optimism comes from if people have an understanding of the issues. Do you think that ordinary Australians have an understanding of these climate issues? And if not, why not? And how can that be addressed?
Well, I think Australians have got a better understanding of the issue than they had 5 years ago on all. There's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of outright lies out there as well, and a lot of misleading opinion. But despite all of that, I think we are getting better educated about the issue, and this is going to, I think, go on for decades. It's going to be very necessary that we continue to discuss this and increase our capacity to think clearly about this issue, because it's not going to go away. It's going to be here for decades, and our future in large part is going to depend on it. So we are improving our understanding, not fast enough, but it's happening.
Now, what sort of things, I guess, can ordinary Australians implement into their own lives? You've mentioned solar hot water heating is one thing. What other things can they do to implement that?
Yeah. Look, it very much depends on the position that you're in. If you're a student renting, it's really, really difficult to do much in terms of solar hot water or anything else. If you own your own home, you're in a very different sort of position. But the one thing that everyone can do, regardless of their situation, is to show some leadership in this area. Get informed and show some leadership. So when someone does say something that's not right, tell them. Engage in a debate. Be a leader in your local community. Even if you're in a student accommodation, have a look at the electricity bill and say to people, well, why don't we try to reduce it? Try to do something. Maybe think about buying green electricity. Whatever it is, acts of leadership I think are particularly important now, because it's one thing we're lacking in this society at the moment, is leadership on this issue.
And now you've also mentioned in the past about the theories of the point of no return and the tipping point. You said that the tipping point is we reached that in the 90s at the point where enough pollution was built up that environmental impact has started to happen. And you say that the point of no return is the point where no matter what we do, it won't do any good. Are we approaching that point of no return?
Well, look, the ideas you just outlined are those of James Hansen, who I reported on in various publications. He has a more alarming view, I suppose, of this than most scientists. What climate scientists would tell you now, I think, is that If we manage to reduce emissions below 450 parts per million or keep them below that, we've got a 75% chance of avoiding dangerous climate change. So things hang in the balance at the moment. No one can be certain about the tipping point or the point of no return and where they lie, but we can see that there is a compelling argument for reducing our emissions as quickly as we can to minimise the risk.
And Professor Flannery, just finally, looking into the future, 10 years into the future, where do you see Australia?
10 years into the future, it's a long way off, but by 2020 I hope that we're well on the way to reducing our emissions, that we actually have turned the curve down, that we've made very significant investments in clean energy technologies right across the spectrum, that we're much more engaged with this issue and plugged in, and we are finding new prosperity in terms of this emerging new economic paradigm.
Professor Tim Flannery, thank you very much for joining us here at the University of Wollongong's The Current.
Thank you.